The Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration has started on a strong note with major appointments and decisions made in its first 2 weeks in office, as the fuel subsidy is removed and as a new policy direction. The suspension of the former CBN governor, Godwin Emefiele, has also gotten the nation talking. Also, students of tertiary institutions can now access education loans, as President Tinubu has started on a very bright and energetic note. Despite all these positive, there's still pockets of insecurity issues battling the nation and many other decisions waiting to be taken in the coming weeks. The state of the nation is seen in different ways across Nigerian public and Politics HQ. On Politics HQ today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Pastor Ituah Ighodalo to talk to me on the state of the nation, Nigeria's new president, and what the future holds. Pastor Ituah Ighodalo is the senior pastor and founder at Trinity House. A warm welcome to you, Pastor Ighodalo, and thanks for your patience and honoring our invitation on Politics HQ.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Now, Pastor Ighodalo, as a prominent spiritual leader in Nigeria, what's your personal expectations of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's new administration? How do you envision his leadership in shaping the nation's future? What are your expectations?
Well, President Tinubu has his work cut out for him. He has come into a country that is badly battered economically. Security is down. People are anxious. People are poor. People are desperate. So he should do very well to try and lift up the people of Nigeria. We need a safe environment to operate in. We need a good economy that we can plan and predict. We need predictable policies that everybody understands and we can follow. And we need a government that is very, very sensitive to the needs and the yearnings of the people, most of whom are extremely poor. So he has a lot of work to do, and I hope he's going to be able to do the work.
Now, Pastor Ighodalo, considering your extensive experience in both spiritual and societal matters, what is your nuanced assessment of President Tinubu's policies and actions so far? In our opening statement, we did talk about the student loans, we talked about removal of fuel subsidy, and do you believe they effectively address the pressing needs and aspirations of Nigerian people? I know it's still early days. He hasn't even done a month yet in office, but from what you've seen, what's your assessment?
I like the fact that he's been courageous enough to remove the fuel subsidy. The method and manner is quite okay by me. A lot of people think he should have consulted more, but I know that if he tried that,
we're just postponing.
Then the great barons would have blocked that. So I like the fact that it was a swift move and it was a needed move. I like the fact that he's trying to sanitize the CBN and even up, I think they are approaching having one exchange rate that everybody can predict. And I want to see what he's going to do on security. We really need a lot of work to be done on security. So far, things seem to be a bit calm in the last 2 weeks, but we don't know what people are going to show up with. So he needs to be able to anticipate them and all that. One thing he must address is the way by which Nigeria can generate as much revenue as possible from all our resources.
Regardless of oil. Away from oil.
We need to move totally away from oil. In the 50s and 60s and 70s, we're not oil dependent. I don't see any reason why we should be oil dependent at this point in time. So if we can approach this issue of derivation and kill that animal once and for all, and come up with a policy that will make everybody happy in terms of derivation and make everybody able to go back and harness the coal, the tin, the columbite, all the manganese, the gold that we have, the lithium, that's wasting because the policies to harness these resources is just not there. We need to face that head on.
And that's the right word. It's wasting. Nigeria is a blessed country, and there's no reason why we should have huge numbers of people living in poverty. Now, Pastor Ituah, the role of the clergy in nation building is crucial. We've seen what Martin Luther King did in America. We've seen Father Tom Huddleston in South Africa. In your opinion, what specific steps should religious leaders take to actively support and collaborate with the government in addressing the multifaceted challenges Nigeria faces today. And what are your thoughts on separation of church and politics? Because some people say, you're called to a different role and you really shouldn't comment on political matters. There's that debate that you should just focus on winning souls, as they say.
Winning souls for them to come and suffer in the economy and maybe perish? No. You see, a lot of people have gotten this absolutely wrong. And if they're spiritual and they read the Bible very well from where I come from, they realize that church and politics are one and the same and they cannot be separated. First of all, if you notice the inauguration or the coronation of King Charles,
yes,
a political leader, he was coronated by the church. It was the church that anointed him. So the role of the church is about threefold. First of all, to be the conscience of the nation and to be the one who can speak truth to power. Because they have heard from God, they know what God is saying. They should be able to say to man what God has said, and they must say the truth, regardless of what the situation is. If the church had not been strong, David, one of the greatest kings, would have gotten away with murder and with adultery. If the church had not been strong, Ahab would have gotten away with cheating his people. So the church must be the conscience of the nation, speaking the truth in as best a way as they can without rocking the boat. Number two, the church must also support and encourage the leader who is doing right. If a leader is doing right, the church must be there to say, you are doing right, God is pleased with you, keep doing it, and we're praying for you and we're supporting you. So the church must pray. Number three, the church must educate and inform its people on what they can do to make the nation a better place. Must also ensure that it brings up its people, it disciples its people, brings up honest people, forthright people, truthful people, dependable people, hardworking people, people with the fear of God, and make them available for leadership positions. So the church must be a good hunting ground for the political leaders to come and choose leaders, okay? That must be part of the role of the church. And then encourage the people to get involved. That's what the church must do. It mustn't shy from that responsibility.
Pastor Ituah, you've spoken quite well on the role of the church, but the reality is different, and that is what has led some school of thought, some people to suggest a Rwandan-type model for Nigeria, that the regulation, that we've seen a proliferation of the church, and in the wake of the elections and throughout the electionary period, you hear all sorts of prophecies that, on Inauguration Day, the President X and Y will happen, and all of that. And I'm sure you've seen videos where you just shake your head and say, no, you can't be doing this in the name of the God that we serve. There's the Pentecostal Fellowship of Nigeria, there's the Christian Association of Nigeria. What can the church regulate itself? And what do you make of a Rwandan model where the government tells you that, you need to have a PhD in theology, you need to register before you can be a church, that the Rwandan people are already blessed by God, so we don't need churches on every street?
It's a bit unfortunate that the church has not been able to regulate itself. It's a bit unfortunate, and I wish that CAN and PFN were a bit more active in self-regulation. But then the things of the Spirit are difficult things. It's difficult to hold the Spirit down. And when a man says, thus saith the Lord, it's difficult. But then there must be the laws of the land, the rules of the land that govern proper behavior in a man, and the limits to which a man can take control of another's life and entity, yes, and the freedom of speech and so on and so forth. If the government can put in those rules that make sure that men behave properly, then the church will fall in line. And you don't really need to have an extreme. I think the Rwanda model is almost extreme.
But when you look at what happens in a place like Calabar, where children are accused of witchcraft, I mean, some would disagree and say, it's not extreme, because when you have a situation where there's no checks and balances, and it's almost like a culture. Somebody wakes up in the morning, accuses an innocent 7-year-old or boy or girl of being a witch, and the person is banished, this child is banished into the forest to fend for themselves. It's quite extreme, and I believe Nigerians should not, we shouldn't have that sort of things happening in 21st century, 2023 Nigeria.
No, the church, no man, no church should have any right to, as you
Yes.
say, banish any. The laws of the land are clear. And if the laws are clear and the human rights of that person is protected, then no pastor would be breaching the law to banish anybody into the forest or anything like that. I mean, the laws of Nigeria are there
Exactly.
already.
So if the government and the security agencies are enforcing their laws, it covers everything, even the church activities.
Even the church,
yes.
yeah, it's even the church. And the church falls within that law. Even to register a church today,
Yes.
you have to go through some legal process. If you're employing people in church, there's a legal process to which you employ them. So the laws of Nigeria, as they stand, sufficiently guide and guard the behavior of people and of a church. I think the laws are sufficient as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. Now, moving on, Pastor Ighodalo, from your perspective, talking about the state of the nation, what are the key policy areas that you expect President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to prioritize to foster sustainable national development, improve the livelihoods of ordinary Nigerians, which you emphasize on, and how can these policies bridge gaps in social, economic, and infrastructural development?
Most of them are out there. Senator Shehu spoke about them already. I'm just going to repeat some or lend my voice. We know our problems in Nigeria. The first problem is insecurity. Okay, that's the first and major problem. Wherever anywhere is insecure, it's not going to attract money, it's not going to attract economic development, and so on and so forth. So the government must look for how to secure the land, although it goes hand in hand also with economic development. Number two is infrastructure. The main other problem that we have is a real paucity of infrastructure, be it power, be it rail, be it roads. If you don't have infrastructure, there's no way that you can factor economic development. The third are policies, and that has to do with derivation, deregulation, what to put on the exclusive list, what to put on the concurrent list, what to make sure that you have the right policies to ensure that there's ease of doing business in Nigeria. Then number four is to make sure that you have policies that will generate sustainable empowerment for those who need to be empowered. Number five, we have to look at education. And this time, education in Nigeria is not just paper education. It's education that will make sure that a man is worth employing or can generate revenue and income after they have finished a period of education. It could be primary, it could be secondary, it could be tertiary, but at every level of education, especially beyond secondary, we must provide enough education to make sure that the people coming out of our educational system are economic units themselves. So you need to have some technical schools to bridge the gap of our technical education. We need to have some schools that will deal with the distance between what people need. So when we're educating people, we must consult the economy. What does the economy need?
The current needs.
The current needs of the economy. Just not churning out people,
numbers.
the numbers.
And then employers have to deal with retraining and...
retraining, and they're not just useful. They're not just employable because they have not been properly educated. So there must be a connection between the economic needs of the nation and the kinds of education people are getting. And I think there's a gap in that. Not only that, there's not even enough educational resource. 20 million children out of school is preposterous. In another 10 years, there'll be bandits. So we must, Bola Tinubu must quickly address the educating of those 20 million children out of school.
As a matter of urgency.
Urgency, desperate. And then I hear that there's a high prevalence of drug abuse now all over the place. So we must see how to tackle this drug issue front head on. Otherwise, it's also going to be a problem in another 10 years' time.
Now, Pastor Ighodalo, as a pastor, you have a unique position to foster a harmonious relationship between the government and religious organizations. Could you elaborate on practical ways to establish and maintain a positive synergy between the two, ensuring that both serve the interests of the Nigerian people? And some often say that, you know, if it wasn't for religious organizations, Nigeria won't be in the state that we are now, that you have a calming effect on the general population?
Yeah, the strength of the religious organizations is their influence over their people, especially in Nigeria. Lots of people trust their religious leader. They go to them for comfort, they go to them for advice, they go to them for spiritual direction. And sometimes, largely, some get the comfort that they need. I know the amount of energy and resource I put into looking after the people in my church in terms of mentorship, in terms of consultation,
even welfare.
in terms of welfare, a lot of welfare. We do enormous amount of welfare. So it's important that the government has regular consultation with the religious people. Number one, they will feel the pulse of the people. They will know what the people are feeling. Number two, they will have a direct means of communicating with the people. Number three, they will know the needs of the people. And number four, they will know exactly what to do in terms of preempting anxious moments and things like that. And if we can have that kind of partnership without any corruption or without the government now forcing you in certain directions, it would be beautiful.
I mean, because you feel the pulse of the people. You interact with them at least 3 times in a week, the minimum. So you're in the right position to tell where the shoes hurts, and you get direct feedback from the members of the public. I know you touched on this subject a little, and it's very important. We can't overemphasize the issue of security. Security remains a pressing concern in Nigeria. What concrete steps and strategies do you believe the new administration should undertake to address this issue comprehensively? How can religious leaders contribute to promoting peace, unity, and tolerance amongst different groups?
Let's talk about security first. If this government is going to really tackle security head-on, number one, they should empower and properly skill and tool the security forces, the police and the military where necessary. The state of our policemen and their barracks is deplorable. There is no way you can honestly get good security response from those people. Number two, surveillance and intelligence must be increased, okay? So you must increase the pay of the police, you must increase their working conditions, you must increase their tooling, their skilling, and you must increase the surveillance aspects of the people. That is the first side of security. The second is the economy, because no matter how good your security system is, if people are unemployed or underemployed and hungry, they will take to helping themselves. And the easiest way is crime. So they must also find a way of enhancing the economy, ramping up the economy, leapfrogging the economy, creating wealth very quickly and employment within the economy, okay? And then the laws must be strictly enforced and ensured. Singapore was able to ensure good security by enforcing laws. You know, in Nigeria, there's some people above the law. And as long as that happens, you are not going to be able to have a safe and secure place. So if we can do that, very, very quickly, the security architecture will change. So in choosing his chiefs of staff of the military and the police, he must choose very competent people. This is not a matter of politics now. He must look through the rank and file and look for the most competent, the most skillful, the most honest, the least corrupt, or the non-corruptible, and the one who truly wants to work. He must set their targets, he must give them the resources to work, and he must make sure that he monitors them.
Pastor Ighodalo, I'm happy you mentioned the Singapore example, because you did talk on remuneration earlier. And Singapore police was only able to enforce laws because they are one of the highest paid in the world. So remuneration and welfare of security officials, it gives you a certain level of standing that you can't talk to me anyhow. I am a upstanding member of society. I live well. So it's very important you mentioned that point. Now let's get to this just before we begin to wrap up our conversation. Corruption, the C word. Corruption has deeply impacted Nigeria's progress. In light of this, sir, what proactive measures do you believe the new administration should adopt to effectively combat corruption and promote a culture of transparency and accountability? And also, how can religious leaders play a role in fostering not just ethical governance, societal? If you look at society, you did talk about drug abuse problems and the level of moral decadence and the things people look forward to. There's almost worship of money type of culture by any means necessary. How can we begin to reevaluate our values and know that people work for things take time, and not just because it seems society just likes anybody that has money and no questions asked. So where do we begin to reevaluate our value system and get back on track?
It's important and it's critical. And this is really where one of the biggest challenges of this government and most other governments is. A lot of our political processes are extremely corrupt. They've been founded on corruption, they've been funded by corruption, they have been encouraged by corruption. Today, most politicians, and even our people, you go to them and say, I'll build roads, I'll do this. They say, give us something now.
Yes.
So the politician has to go and look for the money, steal, beg, or borrow the money to give them. So the entire political system is extremely corrupt. The civil service also is very, very, very corrupt because the people are not well paid, they're not set targets, they themselves don't know about the continuity of their tenure, and they are in charge of huge sums of money. It is difficult to find a man in that position who has need, who will not help himself. The entire thing has to be restructured. And our leaders have to lead by example. When you have a governor or a president that has a 20-man car convoy all over the place, big limousines running up and down, huge dressing, huge allowances, private jet up and down, and this is the standard that people are looking up to. The young boy in the village is hoping that one day
he would aspire
to that. That is what he's looking at. And whatever it costs, that is what he wants. So today, church leaders too go in their convoys with their security. I've seen church leaders, they arrive at a function, 3 or 4 security men are running by their cars, opening the door,
emulating what the political
class is doing. Even church leaders are doing it all over the place with sirens everywhere. Small people in small agencies, sirens everywhere. Everybody running up and down, first lady, first man, everything up and down. This is what they see. This is what they see as a standard. This is what they're emulating. So our leaders they have to cut out that nonsense. The other day you saw a Sierra Leonean girl talking to the Prime Minister of Sweden or somewhere, and they were walking together on the streets. Why can't our political leaders do that? They're afraid. They say security problems, blah, blah, blah.
Now, finally, Pastor Ituah Ighodalo, you're a man of faith, and looking at what lays ahead and how we've come in our nationhood and the myriad of problems this administration has to tackle. In less than a minute, because we're out of time, are you hopeful? Do you see the glass half full or empty? That, all those things we've talked about, the negative things, are you hopeful for better Nigeria?
I am. I love Nigeria.
And what's the reason for that, sir?
Because of the resilience of the average Nigerian. We're very resilient people. We're very hardworking people. We're very determined people. We're very forceful people, very aggressive people. So that spirit in each Nigerian keeps Nigeria going. That's the secret behind Nigeria.
Okay, thank you very much, Pastor Ituah Ighodalo, Senior Pastor at Trinity House. It was an absolute pleasure talking to you tonight on Politics HQ. You're watching Politics HQ. I'll give you something to chew on after this quick timeout.